All right, so get this. We're diving into a world where symbols aren't just like pretty pictures.
Right.
They actually have the power to shape reality.
Yeah. It's
We're
even,
talking like full-on divine language stuff here.
yeah, yeah.
And the craziest part is we're going to see if this concept can like actually work in teaching young adults today.
Yeah. I know, right?
It's mind-blowing, isn't it?
It sounds kind of wild, but the source material is packed with lizard folk, time travel, hidden knowledge, all that jazz.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a fun one.
So you're ready to decipher some ancient secrets? Absolutely. I think what's so fascinating about the source material is that it doesn't just mention this like divine language,
Yeah.
it actually lays out a whole system.
Oh, wow.
Like it's like a code. But instead of ones and zeros, you've got these symbols that represent these fundamental forces of the universe.
Okay, so break it down for me. What's this divine language all about?
Well, in the sources, it's called Kodesh. And they have these symbols like alpha that represents consciousness,
Oh,
like the very essence of being.
right.
And then there's beta symbolizing like cause and effect, the whole butterfly effect
Oh,
thing.
yeah. Butterfly flaps its wings, hurricane on the other side of the world. Got
Yeah,
it.
exactly. But what's really wild is that each symbol isn't just some random doodle.
Oh, really?
Each one's like loaded with layers of meaning.
Like, what you
Like, take alpha, for example. It's not just about being aware, it's about the potential that comes with consciousness, the ability to create, to destroy, even to choose.
Wow. That's a lot for one symbol to carry.
Right.
Yeah, it's almost like each symbol's a seed, and when you combine them to make Kodesh words, you're basically like planting an idea or a concept into reality.
Yeah. It's powerful stuff.
And these Kodesh words can apparently be combined into even bigger texts, like the Veda, that supposedly hold all these universal secrets.
Yeah.
Do you think this divine language could be like a metaphor for something we struggle with in the real world, especially when we're like trying to teach young adults?
I think that's a really great point. Imagine if we could tap into that same sense of power and possibility when we're teaching.
Yeah.
Think about something like coding, right?
Okay.
It's basically like a modern form of Kodesh. You're manipulating these symbols, you're creating these digital realities, you're building websites, you're creating apps, you're building entire virtual worlds.
Wow, I never thought about it like that before. It's like they're like shaping their own little corner of the universe with every line of code.
Exactly.
It's not just about coding, though, is it?
Oh, no, no, not at all. I mean, this idea of a divine language, it can also apply to things like critical thinking and media literacy.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we are constantly bombarded with information every day, symbols and messages coming at us from every direction. And the ability to like decipher them, to understand the meaning behind them, the intent behind them, that's like a superpower in today's world.
Totally. It's like we're surrounded by this like invisible code.
Yeah.
And if we can learn to crack it, we can unlock so much about ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this divine language
Mm-hmm.
that has the potential to like shape reality. Well, guess what? Our sources introduce us to a civilization that's obsessed with exactly that: power and control.
Oh, here we go.
The lizard folk.
The lizard folk. And let me tell you, they're not your average, sunbathing on a rock reptiles.
Oh, really?
No, no. We're talking like ancient, highly advanced species. And they have this fascinating, complex social structure.
Okay.
Imagine a society divided into these really distinct castes.
Okay.
You've got the Titans, who are like master builders, architects. Then you've got the venomous elite,
Okay.
pulling strings from the shadows,
Oh, I see.
masters of manipulation and intrigue.
Sounds like a recipe for some serious drama,
Oh, absolutely.
especially when you throw the berserkers into the mix.
Oh, don't even get me started on the berserkers.
They sound terrifying.
They're terrifying. Just picture these like genetically engineered warriors, pure muscle and aggression, ready to tear down anything that gets in their way.
What I find interesting is that their society's built on this like rigid hierarchy,
Oh, absolutely.
with each caste having this specific role to play.
Right.
And it makes you think about the benefits and the drawbacks
Mm-hmm.
of that kind of system. On one hand, you have order, you have efficiency, everyone knows their place.
Right.
But then on the other hand, like, what happens when individuals want to, break free from their assigned roles?
Right.
What about creativity,
Yeah.
innovation,
Yeah.
the potential for, like, people outside the elite to contribute something unique?
Right. There's a tension there, isn't there? Like
Yeah.
a real struggle for balance.
Yeah. between like maintaining order and allowing for individual expression.
Exactly.
And speaking of individuals, we got to talk about Vikar, the hegemon,
Rikar, oh boy.
the big boss lizard in charge of this whole reptilian empire.
Yeah.
He sounds like a real piece of work.
Oh, Vikar's story is fascinating.
Really?
He's fiercely dedicated to his people and their traditions, and he's driven by this almost desperate desire to solidify their dominance.
Wow.
But at the same time, you sense this like vulnerability in him.
Oh, really?
This fear of losing control, of his whole civilization crumbling under his watch.
Okay, so we've got this divine language, we've got this complex lizard folk society, and a leader who's grappling with some pretty heavy stuff.
Right.
Where do all these threads connect?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. The sources suggest that Vikar becomes absolutely fixated on finding the center of time.
The center of time.
The center of time.
Whoa!
He believes that by mastering this divine language and manipulating time, he can actually rewrite history.
Hold on, he wants to, like, change the past?
He wants to change the past. He believes he can ensure his people's ultimate supremacy.
That sounds incredibly dangerous.
Oh, it is. And that's where we're going to pick up in our next part, because the sources hint that tampering with time has some really, really dire consequences.
Oh, no.
Not just for the lizard folk, but for the entire universe.
Uh-oh.
But we'll delve into all that chaos after a quick break. So while we take a pause, think about this. If you had the power to rewrite history, would you? And what would be the consequences of such a monumental act?
Wow.
We'll be back in a flash to unpack everything that unfolds when Vikar attempts to control the uncontrollable.
All right, so we left off with Vikar finding this center of time, right?
Right.
He's got the divine language at his disposal, and he's, like, ready to make some serious changes to history. What could possibly go wrong, right?
Well, let me tell you, it's not pretty. The sources describe it as like this cosmic tapestry being ripped apart. Ancient civilizations just vanish. The present becomes totally unstable. And the future's thrown into utter chaos.
So it's not just a, like, little whoopsie-daisy.
Yeah.
This is like a full-blown universal meltdown.
That's a mess.
So what happens to the lizard folk? What about humanity? Does anyone survive this whole cosmic catastrophe?
It's rough. The sources paint a pretty grim picture of destruction and upheaval, but there's a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos.
Okay.
They hint at a potential reset.
A reset.
Yeah, like a new beginning that kind of emerges from the ruins of the old reality.
Interesting.
It's not totally clear what this new world looks like, but it suggests that even in the face of total annihilation, there's this possibility for renewal.
Okay, so it's not a complete and utter end.
Not necessarily.
But this reset, it sounds like it comes at a massive cost.
Definitely.
What happens to the characters we've been talking about? Like Kale, Alara, the luminaries, are they all just, like, wiped from existence?
That's where things get a bit tricky. The sources are kind of ambiguous about the fate of specific characters. It's possible that some are just completely erased, while others might be reborn into this new reality,
Oh, wow.
carrying these like faint echoes of what came before.
It's almost like a cosmic reboot, but with these, like, lingering whispers of the past.
Exactly.
It makes you think about, like, the nature of memory,
Yeah.
how our experiences shape us, even if we don't consciously remember them. But let's shift gears for a second, bring this back to our main focus. The divine language and its potential for teaching young adults. How does all this craziness connect to the challenges we face in education today?
Remember how we were talking about coding being like a modern form of Kodesh?
Oh.
Well, imagine if we could teach young adults to not just write code, but to actually understand the impact of the technology they're creating, like the really profound impact.
So it's not just about the technical skills.
Yeah.
It's about ethical consideration,
It's-
the potential consequences, the big picture impact of their work.
Precisely. If we can give young adults a framework for understanding the power of language, symbols, and technology, I think we might actually be able to guide them towards creating a more positive future.
It's a powerful vision.
It is.
But how do we translate this, like, abstract concept of a divine language into actual teaching methods?
Well, I think it all starts with fostering that sense of wonder and curiosity.
Okay.
Instead of just presenting facts and figures,
Right.
we need to spark their imaginations, help them see the magic, the potential in the world around them.
So less textbook, more like explore and discover.
Exactly. We can use storytelling, art, music, even games to engage their emotions and make learning feel more relevant to their lives.
Yeah, it's about tapping into that desire to create, to shape their own reality.
Exactly. And it's also about encouraging them to think critically, to question things, to consider different perspectives.
Right.
Just like that divine language in the source material, the world is full of symbols and messages that need to be deciphered.
And we need to equip them with the tools to navigate this like crazy complex landscape,
Absolutely.
to make smart choices, to use their knowledge and their skills for good.
And perhaps most importantly, I think we need to instill in them a sense of responsibility.
Responsibility. Okay.
I mean, just like Vikar's story,
Yeah.
even the most well-intentioned actions can have some really unintended consequences, especially when you're dealing with power.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that with great power comes great responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also kind of an inspiring challenge, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
like an invitation to use our knowledge and creativity to build a better world.
Absolutely. We've talked a lot about the dangers of manipulating time and reality, but there's another theme that keeps popping up in the source material.
Oh, what's that?
This idea of balance.
Balance. Okay, how does that fit into all of this?
Well, think about it. The lizard folk are constantly struggling to maintain balance within their own society.
Right.
Vikar's quest for power disrupts the balance of time. And even the luminaries, these beings that seem to operate outside the normal rules, they're working to restore some sense of harmony to everything.
So it's not just about like good versus evil.
No.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly. Finding that sweet spot between these opposing forces, light and darkness, order and chaos, creation and destruction, all these things are interconnected. They're all necessary for a healthy universe.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this applies to teaching. It's not just about like cramming information in their
I
heads.
don't know.
It's about helping them find that equilibrium,
Yeah.
that sense of balance in their own lives and in the world around them.
Precisely. And that balance, you don't just achieve it once and you're done. It's this constant process of adjustment, learning, growing, making mistakes, and course correcting.
So how do we instill this understanding of balance in young adults? Where do we even begin?
I think it starts with self-awareness. The characters in the source material who seem to navigate these challenges the best are those who understand their own strengths and weaknesses.
Right, their motivations and their biases.
Exactly. It's that classic wisdom, know thyself. If we can help young adults develop that self-awareness, they'll be better equipped to make choices that actually promote balance in their own lives.
And in the world around them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about, looking inward.
Right.
It's also about encouraging them to seek out different perspectives, to engage in meaningful dialogue, to be open to challenging their own assumptions.
It's about building bridges instead of walls.
Exactly. Finding that common ground even when you disagree. It's about recognizing that everyone has a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Everyone has a unique perspective that can contribute to a more complete picture. And that balance, it's not some static state. It's this dynamic process. It's a constant adjustment. It's a willingness to adapt to changing circumstances and a commitment to finding solutions that really promote harmony and well-being for everyone.
So how do we take all of this, these big ideas about divine languages, lizard folk, cosmic resets, how do we make it relevant to the everyday lives of young adults?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's what we're going to be diving into in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We're going to look at some real-world parallels and see how this whole idea of balance, this theme of balance, resonates beyond just the fictional realm. And we'll consider some practical strategies for, how do we actually bring these ideas into our teaching and learning?
Sound good.
Stay tuned because the conversation is just getting started.
We've been through some wild stuff, right? Divine languages, lizard folk, cosmic resets.
It's been a journey.
But let's bring it back down to earth for a minute. How do these, fantastical concepts actually connect to the real world, especially when we're thinking about teaching young adults today?
One of the most striking parallels I see is this idea of ecological balance. Oh, okay.
Our sources, they really emphasize this interconnectedness of all living things, how even seemingly small actions can have these ripple effects throughout an entire ecosystem.
Right.
It reminds us that we're not separate from nature. We're a part of it.
It's like that butterfly effect we talked about, right?
Exactly.
One tiny change can set off this, chain reaction that impacts the whole system.
Exactly. And it really makes you think about our responsibility as, stewards of this planet.
Yeah.
Are we living in a way that promotes balance and sustainability?
Right.
Or are our actions actions, are they pushing us towards some kind of tipping point, a disruption that has, like, irreversible consequences?
That's a big question.
It is.
It's not just about the environment, though, is it?
No, not at all.
Our sources also talk about the balance of power within societies, that like delicate dance between individual freedom and collective responsibility. Think back to the lizard folk and that rigid caste system. Each caste had its own function, its strengths and weaknesses. When they worked together, things were good. Their civilization thrived. But when one caste tried to, like, dominate, the whole system just fell apart.
Yeah, it's like a real-life example of, like, checks and balances, right?
Exactly.
You need that diversity of perspectives, that interplay of different forces to maintain a healthy society.
It makes you question those narratives that we hear all the time about power.
Yeah.
Whether it's political power, economic power, social power, is it always this like zero-sum game
Right.
where one group wins and another group loses?
Right.
Or can we create systems where everybody benefits, where there's shared prosperity, a more equitable distribution of resources?
These are some seriously big questions, and I got to admit, it's a little daunting to think about how to tackle these, especially when we're talking about teaching young adults. So where do we even begin? How do we help them understand and navigate these really complex issues?
Well, the sources actually offer a few really interesting ideas.
Okay.
One of the main themes that pops up is this importance of self-awareness.
Okay.
The characters who are able to navigate all these crazy challenges, they're the ones who really understand their own strengths and weaknesses, their motivations, their biases.
Right. It all comes back to that, like, ancient program, know thyself.
Exactly. And if we can help young adults develop that self-awareness, they'll be in a much better position to make choices that promote balance
Right. In their own lives,
in their own lives and the world around
the
them.
world around them.
Yeah.
But self-awareness is like, it's just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right.
What else do we need?
We need to encourage them to seek out different perspectives,
Okay.
to engage in like thoughtful dialogue, to be willing to challenge their own assumptions.
It's about building bridges, not walls.
Exactly. Finding that common ground, even when you disagree. It's about understanding that everyone has a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Everyone brings a unique perspective that can contribute to a more complete picture.
Exactly, yeah.
And recognizing that balance isn't, it's not a destination.
Right.
It's a journey.
It's a process.
It's a process. It's a willingness to adapt,
Yeah.
a commitment to finding solutions that really work for everyone.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, what's like the key takeaway for our listeners? What's that one like nugget of wisdom that we want them to walk away with?
I think it's a call to action,
Okay.
an invitation to be more conscious, more deliberate, more intentional about how we live our lives.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that our choices have ripple effects and that we all have this power to shape the world for better or worse.
It's an empowering message, but it's
Yeah.
also like a humbling one, right?
It is.
We're not just individuals on these separate paths. We're all interconnected. We're part of this larger web of relationships that extends across time and space.
So as you go about your day, keep this idea of balance in mind. How can you bring more harmony into your own life? How can you contribute to a world that's more balanced, more just? The answers, they might not be easy to find, but the journey itself is so valuable.
Well, that brings our deep dive to a close. We've explored some ancient mysteries, some cosmic chaos, and this timeless search for balance. But the conversation doesn't end here. Take these ideas, these questions, and let them shape your own understanding of the world. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep seeking those connections that bring us all together. Until next time, happy diving.